My name is Chris Onsbury. I'm the Director of Emergency Services, so I really am the coordinating piece, I guess, for these guys. My job is to make sure that their communications go off well and without a hitch and provide support wherever we can. I also oversee the Missoula County 911 Center, so we're the public safety answering point, so we take all the 911 calls from Missoula County and then dispatch out the appropriate aid. So we play that, and then we're also the first public information piece, the first place that most of the contact with the public goes until we have an incident up and running. So.
My name is Dave Kreisen with the Missoula Air Force, Chief of Public Safety. We're a combination fire and police department, specifically aircraft rescue firefighting agency, and we could not operate without any of these guys. We rely the most of any organization on our mutual aid agreements. We're basically there for the initial bad thing that could happen, but then everybody else is basically going to come do our job for us. So we appreciate them.
My name is Brad Giffen. I'm the patrol captain of the Missoula County Sheriff's Office. I've been there for about 22 years now, and I'll express pretty much the same thing everybody else does. I think living in Missoula, you folks enjoy agencies that understand that all of us are resource strapped. And when you start looking at scenarios like I see written out here, you're going to see a pretty standard response, I think, from every agency, and that is we're going to pull together to address the immediate issues, because we do that on a daily basis anyway. Missoula County, if you don't know, is 2,600 square miles in size. That's like 1.25 times the size of the state of Delaware geographically. And as a sheriff's office, we only have 4 or 5 deputies to cover that geography. So we call on the Highway Patrol, the City Police Department, the Airport Police, any agency basically that we can to work with us on major incidents. And I'm just glad that we could be here to share information with you folks about the plans that we have and the things that take place during events such as these.
My name is Burley McWilliams. I am with Missoula County Public Schools. I hold a lot of hats, but what's most important today is I'm the risk manager. I'm really just happy to be here because we have a lot of emergency personnel here that we rely on a lot. We're kind of just a small piece of pot, I guess, but we have a lot of good plans in place, which involve a lot of these professionals up here. And it's something we've really taken at the forefront of the district over the last 24 to 36 months. We've revised our entire emergency planning, preparedness planning, and we've implemented a lot of great tools. And I know it'll work great with having these guys respond to any kind of emergency that we have in our school district. So, thanks.
Hi, I'm Shannon St. Ange. I'm the Director of Patient Care Resources for Community Medical Center, and I also wear many hats. I'm very happy to be here today to work with people that I work with all the time. I feel like we're maintaining and preserving relationships with each other, and I think you'll be quite pleased to see our responses to some of this stuff. Leanne Breland from St. Pat's wanted to be here today but couldn't, and we work really well together. She does the emergency management over at St. Pat's, and she told me to say that almost every disaster ends at the hospital, and we are prepared. But anyways, I think you'll find that we are quite prepared, if anything, just to be a good team and help each other. So thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Lemke. I'm the Chief of Police at the University Police Department. I've been a cop in Missoula here now for 30 years, 20 at the city and 10 at the university. The university is a unique location. We can have a population of about 20 in the summertime and expand to about 27,000 on Grizz game day. So it creates some unique challenges, just like everybody else has said, that we depend on our co-workers here in this room for that coordination. I'm responsible for emergency management at the university. To me, that doesn't mean just managing our own problem, but if there's an incident within the city, offering ourselves as a resource. We've got a lot of buildings and facilities that can be used during an emergency.
And I'm Don Whalen. I'm the manager with the ambulance service here in Missoula. I started in '82. Florence math, I don't know, it's about 29 years, I think. We pretty much respond anywhere we're requested by 911 center. We commonly will go over to Idaho or wherever they can't get an ambulance into, or when the helicopters can't fly. We run 9 ambulances. Basically, 4 of them are staffed 24/7, with one of them being on call. The other are just sitting in reserve, or they're pretty busy in the fall during football season, soccer, and stuff like that. We, like rural fire, city fire, we operate in the command system. We kind of like where we're at because we're way down the food chain. We come in, they tell us what to do, we take our patient, and we go. So we operate in the command system every day, works well, and that's where we fit in.
Thank you for those introductions. As you can tell, we've got some really great resources here. This is meant to be a dialogue to assemble this quality of panel. It's a great opportunity for you guys to see what's going on in Missoula, what might happen in Missoula, and get your questions answered. So this is meant to be a dialogue. If you've got questions, feel free to interject yourself, raise your hand, we'll try and get attention. We don't have a mic for out there, so we'll try and repeat the question if I can pay attention long enough to repeat it. Before it comes up in the panel, I guess I probably should admit to you guys that I had spent some quality time in the back of some of these guys' patrol cars. That being said, my brother was on the Missoula PD for 23 years and worked with a lot of these guys here, and it was mostly in the ride, well, I should say entirely on the ride along program. Thank you very much. So we'll go ahead and start with our scenarios. I know I said earlier I didn't know why they picked me for this position. I'll guarantee it wasn't for my reading skills. So we've got about a half a dozen scenarios, and we'll just kick off with that right now. So if there's no questions on ground rules and what we're doing here, we'll go ahead and kick it off. I'll try and minimize the disruption with this mic. I woke him up in the back, I see. So, our first scenario is entitled Earthquake. The city of Missoula is mostly peaceful and sleeping. It is 5:20 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Early delivery trucks are rolling to their destinations, and a few coffee shops are organizing their wares. A great rumble is heard, and the ground starts to shake. From the south, there's a rolling effect like a wave moving towards the downtown area. Buildings are swaying, streets are cracking, and lights are flickering. In the downtown center, the Glacier Building is shedding the southeast corner of the structure onto the corner of Higgins and Front. Down Higgins, pieces of many buildings are lying in the streets. Water is spewing from several cracks in the pavement. The smell of natural gas wafts through the air, and lights are flickering. The seismic readings monitor about 6.1. Small shakes continue at a slowing rate. Those who are sleeping are now awake, wondering what to do. How will this situation be handled by our local authorities? So this is a great opportunity to tell a donut joke, and I won't because my brother hated donut jokes. But I'm sure the PD is close to downtown. I'm going to hand it off to the PD first if you guys want to take it from there. And what I'd like to do is have the PD make some comments, what would fire do, what would the hospital see, and we'll just pass it on down the line. So PD wants to take this one first.
In this case, obviously, fire and PD would be responding at the same time. We'd be setting up an area. We determine an area where we could be together and try and get assessment from other units that are out as to the damages and the real emergencies that would need to be addressed. The gas leak and the obviously, we'd have to be looking at bridges and those kind of things, but we're going to look at working with fire immediately on the real emergent issues that might arise.
Yeah. What we do really at the fire department is pretty simple. Our goals are always life safety, incident stabilization, and then property conservation. What changes for some of the scenarios you developed today, of course, is the size and scope of that. But you're probably all aware of how the emergency services work in your community, not just in the city limits. But we have a tiered response system to any emergency. Half the calls we go on are medical emergencies, so we always respond in conjunction with Dawn's crews from Messi. Those people end up at one of the hospitals. For most of those calls, law enforcement's also involved, whether it's city PD, county sheriff, highway patrol, whatever. not only provide scene security, but sometimes to help control the scene itself. We respond in conjunction with the other fire departments in Missoula County as well. For something like this, I guess the keys to achieving those three goals, life safety, incident stabilization, and property conservation, are to first and foremost get as much help and role in as possible. And so one of the first things we do in a circumstance where there was an earthquake in our area is we call in all of our off-duty personnel, and we contact Chris and the people at 911 and basically ask them to request as much assistance as we can from our cooperator agencies, not only the folks that are represented here, but the other agencies in Missoula County that we know can provide assistance with the kind of circumstances we're going to find in an earthquake. So if you have specific questions about that, our on-duty crews obviously will respond where they're dispatched to what they feel is the greatest life safety threat, which in circumstances like this might be getting people evacuated from buildings that are already structurally unstable and or buildings that do have a significant gas or other hazardous material leak. So that will be our initial crew's response. And meanwhile, we'll be calling in the rest of our crews. One of the things that we try to get done relatively early on is establish some kind of public information structure in a unified command that we'd set up with law enforcement and other agencies involved in fire. Because obviously the community is going to need to know as soon as possible not only what the extent of the damage and danger is, but what they can or should be doing to assist us. So that would hopefully happen in the first few hours once we set up some kind of command system. So.
I think along with that, we have to remember that we're including our elected officials as far as our appropriate declarations, and then which would also put in motion any other resources that we would need to extend this event if obviously this is going to be a long-term event that would require much more than this community itself would be able to handle in the long term.
I think Chief Boehner summed it up fairly well for us as well. We have some of the same, well, obviously the same goals to come with. One of our first things is to establish ourselves in the command system and be a participating member there, and then dispatch our crews as priority to the instance, as the instance, realize priority of the instance and deal with those in that way. We too are understaffed, as was stated early on here, and so one of our main things initially would be to call back crews, and we are a combination department as well, and so we have volunteers that would be called in to assist us as well. One of the things that we discussed regarding this scenario is oftentimes the difficulty in accessing certain areas because of infrastructure failure or whatever the case may be. And so obviously getting out and finding those areas and identifying that as an issue early on so that help can be rendered as soon as possible would be obviously a priority as well for us. But we would certainly come together as a group and deal with those issues.
So my department's actually going to be doing two different things. They're going to be fielding the initial calls from citizens reporting things that have been damaged and where fire and law enforcement are needed. In addition to that, chances are good we'll be doing some of the callback for the city fire department, for rural fire, for the sheriff's department. They'll also be calling in additional staff for the 911 center, since this is happening at 5:20 in the morning, which is kind of when the ebb of our staffing is in those early morning hours. There's 4 to 5 dispatchers on at that point. Then on the other side, my other half, which is the Office of Emergency Management, I'm the one who would be coordinating with the elected officials to get either an emergency declaration or a disaster declaration done. That does a couple of things for us. One, it allows us to tap into resources that we don't have in this community through the mutual aid system, both at the community level where we can tap our neighbors, but also at the state mutual aid level system. So we'd be coordinating with state ES. Northwest Energy, since we're talking about a lot of their power and gas lines, would be involved in that. Mountain Water would be involved for the water line piece, so they'd have a representative there. We'd also be calling back some staff here to do some initial staffing of the Emergency Operations Center to help provide those logistical support pieces as well to kind of help the user agencies out in the field. And then as the incident grows, that will help us determine what other roles we're going to play during that event. So.
Just assume at 6.1 that our airport's probably going to be closed. Whether it caused actual damage, and there would have to be some inspections, and then the chances of aftershocks, we would probably wave off all traffic and stop anything from going outbound. At that point, probably the only thing we could offer to the mutual aid group is our fire trucks, which are specifically designed for hydrocarbon fuel fires. And they've got huge capacity, and that's probably what would be our main emphasis. And then depending on damage to buildings, trying to get something set up for shelter. We've got a lot of large buildings at the airport, whether it's a terminal or, excuse me, hangars, that maybe we could set up triage or sleeping quarters, etc. And with the shortness of our crew, that's probably about all we could offer at that time. We do have to be really careful on the size of the disaster, what we can use, because we are about 80% funded by the FAA. The main emphasis to them is that we have to keep the airport open. If it's completely closed, I'm sure they're not going to argue us helping on a disaster. But currently, if we have a crash off airport and we respond, we have to either leave one truck at the airport or close the airport for commercial traffic. So it's a little bit, our leash is short, but we would, something this size, I'm sure we'd do all that we could.
From the Sheriff's Office perspective, the Sheriff's Office has long recognized the weakness in the geography of Missoula in that it's divided by several rivers and there are lots of bridges. With our primary focus being on continuing to provide emergency services to people in crises like an earthquake, we have long worked towards getting take-home cars for all of our employees. Our cars are basically our office, and it ensures a couple of things for residents in Missoula County. That they will always have access to a law enforcement response, even if the bridges fail. There are deputies that live all over Missoula County, including Conway and Cedar Lake. Everyone is fairly strategically placed throughout the county geographically so that in a major incident, we can call in all of our resources, every single deputy that we have in a fully equipped car, able to aid people in any capacity that's necessary to address the initial disaster. There will be no loss of services. There's just going to be an actual sheriff's office car geographically located so that the bridges aren't going to be an issue for us. Additionally, the sheriff's office is the office of the coroner. And in situations like this, there are coroner issues that need to be addressed not only in the city of Missoula, but throughout the county geographically wherever we need to provide those services. And the mutual aid pacts that we have with not only the city, but with Ravalli County, Mineral County, and the adjoining counties would be put to use to draw in those additional resources that we would need immediately to address the immediate issues. And then after the declarations are made, then we would be getting help from outside sources.
Missoula County Public Schools, it's 5:20 a.m., so we really don't have we have no activity in our school district at the time. But what we would offer is, if our building structures were secure, we have temporary housing, or if it's a command area that we could offer, Red Cross, that kind of thing. Just to kind of go on a side note, just to let you know what we do have, if it did happen during school hours, we have a communication process with a company called Alert Now where we can contact our parents within a matter of minutes, as long as phone lines are active. This goes through phone lines, email, that kind of thing. We do a lockdown process where we keep our kids in our buildings. If the buildings were structurally sound, we have food from our lunch programs that would be sufficient for those students to live in the building for multiple days. So we have, our kids would be safe at that time, and ample space as well. So, thanks.
At Community Medical Center, just looking at this scenario here, 5:20 a.m. on that side of town. I mean, it could mean that St. Pat's needed us to come help evacuate all their patients and move them over, or it could mean that, St. Pat's has it. So either way, though, we would be helping each other. And contrary to popular belief, we kind of do this every day. Every day, there's patients that need help, there's people that need help, and the health supervisors at the hospitals are basically incident command 24/7, and we would just grow that incident command as needed. depending on the size or need in this situation. One of the first things we would do if it was, 6.1, that's a pretty big deal. If there were people living in, I don't know, apartment buildings down there, or what's going on with that Glacier building at that time of day, we would set up our incident command. We already have it going with our day-to-day, but we would grow that. We would set up our public information officer section so that the media would be able to get their questions answered. They would probably know about the incident before we did, so hopefully we can work together to get that set up. And then stabilization, looking at just the assessment of where patients need to go. We would want to take care of them if we could, help St. Pat's if they had issues on their end, or get patients moved. And then also preparing another section of our command structure, which would be helping families get to their family members if needed.
In any emergency, one of the most important things, you'll hear this theme, is communication. The university has the ability to communicate with all of our students, and as you know, all of our students don't live on campus. Most live off campus. So we would coordinate with whoever the incident commander is, whether it be city fire or police, and offer that service to communicate to the entire UM community about the emergency. And we, of course, would call in our engineers and architects to assess our own buildings, and as long as we're structurally sound, we would coordinate with any incident commander about offering resources. We also have a College of Technology that has heavy equipment. We've got all sorts of things that could be used if we need to move large amounts of anything. So working with everybody is probably the key.
Typically what we do is pretty much the same for most of the scenarios. Once we're paged by 911 and we know we have potential for multiple patients, we'll usually, the medic, the first one out, we usually get on the phone with both hospitals and try to get a hold of both ER docs. Kind of give them a heads up of what we're responding to, and they kind of, I believe, Shannon confirmed this, but they usually at that point get a hold of the house supervisor, and if there's people, they're having elective surgery, whatever, they'll hold off surgeries until we kind of get some feedback back to them. We give them a heads up. We do the same thing as fire does. We'll start calling in off-duty crews. Once we're on scene, we'll hook in with fire. They'll basically, fire usually does the first initial triage and do a very good job at it. We'll kind of set up a treatment area and we'll wait to hear, and then we'll help get people transported or carried or whatever to a field treatment area. We'll start treatment there, and then we really got to, at that point, figure out who's going to go to what hospital, because you kind of want to make sure you don't flood them both. As well as we start the operation, we did the last airport drill, we'll get the air services involved, which isn't going to work real well in an earthquake if the airport's down, but if rotors can still fly. We'll start flying some of those patients from here to Hamilton or Pulse or whatever, the more stable patients, and make sure that we get the most critical ones to the local hospitals and kind of divvy up patients that way. I think it's realistic you'll see some ER physicians probably and some nurses show up in your treatment area and help with those decisions. And I think that's pretty much it. It's pretty much the same for most of the scenarios for us where we fit in.
Wow, I'm impressed. We are blessed with a beautiful community, but we're also blessed with some very professional public servants too. So this is great. Thanks, guys. And Gail. Hey, backing up here a little bit, I guess I should have mentioned earlier, and it kind of slipped my mind, I guess. We had some special invitees as well, some other resources. We didn't need to get the panel too big, but we have some other resources out here as well. We have Tony Tacky from Mount Water. Tony, you back there? And we have, yep. Please hold your applause. Is that what they say? We have Vicki Judd from Northwest Energy. Vicki's back there. Raise your hand, Vicki. Oh, there you are. And we have Greg Beach from Beach Transportation. Is Greg Beach here? Actually, I've been out on the town a few times and I get accused of being Greg Beach. I guess we look so much similar. I don't know that, but I'm not Greg Beach. We have Pete Lawrenson from MRL. Pete's over here. Is Brian Daigle here? Daigle? Brian's not here. Brian was going to be here from Blackfoot Communication. I don't see him. He's also a member of our committee. Bart Peterson from Missoula Electric Cooperative. Okay, Bart's here. And Sean Klaus from the business school. Yeah. Okay, so we have other resources out there. So that's a great, I think that worked really well. If there's anything anybody'd like to change, please, speak up. I think that worked pretty darn well. I got a question in the back?
Yeah, I have a question.
Please try and broaden.
Please what?
Loud.
Okay.
There you go.
I'm a risk manager for a company that does home health care. And we have a concern when these things come up and you're trying to evacuate people. Do you have anything in place knowing where there are people that are bedridden or are on oxygen or are hooked up to different devices that if the electricity goes out, it's sort of crucial? And is there any way that we can help provide you with that information?
Who wants to take that?
Well, we have, at the fire department, and I know Missoula Rural does as well, we do develop for specific occupancies what we call pre-emergency plans. Really, it's incumbent on the management of those occupancies to develop those plans because, as you're well aware, the occupancies change on almost a daily basis. Anytime that any organization in the community wants to get information to their emergency responders about people, we certainly will take that information. It's still clunky for us because they're carried in paper. Also, Chris can maybe speak to whether or not 911 has a limited ability to put some of that information into what the CAD system, the computer-aided dispatch system. So Chris, I don't know what your mechanism is for taking that information.
We do have some limited ability, like Mike said, to put that into our CAD system. We actually are doing kind of a pilot test program with community medical centers, home occupational health division, storing some of that information in our CAD system. The concern in the past has always been because it is private medical information, there is some resistance in the community at large for that information to be in some place that's as public as a 911 center or a fire department. So we do keep some of that information. We certainly do about a lot of the larger care facilities, as far as their occupancy and those kinds of things. But when it comes to a specific residence, right now the only thing we have in our system is that pilot program that we're working on with Community Medical Center right now, their home health outreach.
Regarding the HIPAA, privacy information, what we would do is get our consumers to sign authorizations, waivers for that specific information. This is my address. I need help, that kind of thing. So.
And I think that's what community has worked on through with their client base as well, and that would be something we'd have to look at having in place in order to be able to do that for like a single residence.
Yeah, and that was actually a great question because we were faced with that during the ice storm. I don't remember what year that was. But we were able to actually get a hold of, we know where a lot of the patients are, like the home ventilator patients are because we deal with them. But we were also able to get a hold of NARCO, who was very helpful in getting the information of who lived where. We contacted every one of them that were on ventilators, as well as I think PD might have even went to a couple of houses for us.
Is there more on this specific topic that we're on right now? These are specific? Sean?
Yeah, Sean Klaus of the business school. I'm aware of the system that Officer Lemke talked about where the university can send text messages to students and faculty and staff that opt into it, or get emails, modify our website so that we're aware of what's going on. Do any of the other responders have a similar system? And then I teach a business class in management information systems where my students have created something very similar to what the university has for the chamber. So I'm wondering if anyone else is doing something similar, or if the system my students have created is duplicating efforts, or if that would be something that would be very helpful during a disaster.
Community Medical Center has a couple systems that we use that are telephone, web-based, where for our emergency situations we can send out a message to all of our staff, including the physicians, to let them know what's going on and have them respond to that. And for our staff, we use a staffing system that pages and emails and texts and about 5 different methods of getting a hold of people with a touch of a call an 800 number, put in a message, and push go. So we have that.
Missoula County Public Schools has Alert Now, which is also the same kind of system where we can notify all 8,600 students, families, as well as staff. We actually just purchased the product last month, and we plan on adding, other agencies across the city to help them notify, so they're aware of where we're at in our emergency as well. So.
Ma'am, Rich,
Sorry, before you do that question, just one other thing. Missoula County has one of those systems as well that's actually available to citizens. Everybody with a landline phone number is automatically in that system because the landline phone companies like Quest and Blackfoot Communication are able to provide as part of that information as part of our 911 system. Folks with cell phones would have to actually opt into that system. And there's a link on Missoula County 911 webpage that talks about that system. It's called Reverse 911, but it allows us to make outbound notification basically to citizens based on a geographic area that we want to provide information to during emergencies or disasters. So there's that system available as well.
we're probably running a little bit long on this, but I don't even want to stop. I mean, this is what it's about. It's dialogue, this is the questions that you guys want answered, so this is working about as good as I could have actually imagined, so I'm not going to stop here, yes.
So I'd address this to Shannon and or Don, but given the number of resources that you have in the hospitals or in your emergency services, you're not going to have enough beds or doctors to serve everyone. How do you make the decisions on who gets treatment and who doesn't?
In an actual disaster, we use the START triage protocol. And it's basically one of the founding principles is the greatest good for the greatest number. So we have to make tough decisions on some patients that we know that aren't going to survive. They're probably not going to get treated. And then we basically got to sort the ones that have survivable injuries and try to get those to the appropriate hospital in a timely manner. Or we can stabilize them in the field treatment area, or field hospital we used to call it. But it's basically a field treatment area. You could have somebody that is pretty critical, critical is probably a bad word, after some sort of an incident. But if you get them to a treatment area, manage the airway, or get some bleeding stop or something, those can be downgraded. And that's where a lot of those patients will live until we get them to a hospital. And we'll work closely with both hospitals, and they'll tell us which one could come and when. We'll try to divide up head injuries and orthopedics or whatever. But we really depend on both of the hospitals to give us that information of who should come to their facility. And they work closely together to make those decisions, which really helps us. I can't really speak for the hospital side of it, but that's kind of how we do the pre-hospital side.
You're right on the triage situation and setting up situations on the outside where people that aren't so critical could go, maybe, Hellgate or something, if they were structurally sound. In this situation, we would have the ambulances or people bringing staff, some of their people there, we would have staff, volunteer staff. We have a system where we have a list of a lot of retired physicians and nurses that are willing to be deployed in this situation. And as well, we have a lot of staff that in a normal day would be doing surgeries and recovery room and radiology and endoscopy and all these sedation procedures, which all of a sudden they would be called at 5:20 in the morning and be told, guess what, you're coming in, you're going to be a nurse at a bedside. Your recovery room beds will now be patient beds. So we have that all organized as well as we can. On any given day, we have 148 patients in the hospital, and at this point, if this scenario occurred, we would discharge those patients that could be discharged and open up those beds for acute care.
Manning from Mountain Line Bus Company, and in response to your first question, we've been called by 911 before to help evacuation services for mobility devices and all that. All of our buses are mobility, have access to mobility devices. All of our paratransit vehicles are designed strictly for that. So 911 has called us in the past, and we've brought in operators to evacuate
people because the ambulance don't have those kind of facilities or anything else. So.
Thank you, Wayne.
For Chris, with the system that you have, if you have people who live on near the borders of counties, could they sign up, opt into both counties for that system? Or is that not possible?
Yes, you could. From our website, you can opt into the Missoula County one, but most of the counties surrounding us have that same sort of technology available to them as well. It's one of the services that's provided through our state 911 network. So each county has theirs set up a little bit differently. We just have the link right there on our webpage to try and bring it kind of front and center so that it's very easy for folks to find. I can't speak to where the other counties have it on their pages, but yes, if you live somewhere on the county line, you could in theory sign up for both.
Okay. Sir?
I'm with the MCT Center for the Performing Arts. Given the scenario that you gave us here, I'm curious what your recommendations would be for the highest priority things that the staff who are responsible for a significant size facility that doesn't show obvious evidence of catastrophic damage. What are the highest priority things that the staff should do as soon as they get to their facility? And what are the highest priority things that they should not do as soon as they get to their facility?
These are great questions. This is awesome. Who wants to take that? Yeah, I'd like to make just two quick plugs. One is, hopefully you're all aware that for the last year or so, Missoula County has been working on updating Missoula County. It was called the disaster plan, now it's the emergency operations plan. That document is available through the county website, and they're still seeking public comment on that document. And it addresses some of the, in general, it describes how Missoula County hopes to operate during an emergency of any size or scope. It also provides some indication of what, for specific disasters, what the response of your agencies and the private company partners would be. The other add I want to make is for any specific facility, whether it's private or public, our Fire Prevention Bureau has put together it's kind of a generic fire and life safety operations plan. It's available on our website. And I today emailed that link to Rory. And basically, it's just a general checklist. My guess is that law enforcement probably has something similar to security type issues. It's a general checklist about what any facility owner or management people might think about in the event of an emergency. Obviously, the biggest thing for us is we would not want anyone to go into any structure that might be structurally compromised or that might have a natural gas line break or leak. And so those are the two things you need to look for. If there's any visible signs of damage on the outside of any structure, you should be going into that structure. If there is no visible sign of damage and you open the doors up and you have any indication there's a natural gas leak or smell, you need to stay outside until some emergency operations personnel can respond. So I don't know if that answered your question or not, but those are the two things that we immediately recommend. Don't go into any structure that has any indication from the outside or inside once you get in that there's been any kind of structural damage. Don't stay in any building that you think that might have reason to believe that there's natural gas, propane, or other fuel leaks. So those are the two big ones for us.
So let's take one more and then we'll move on to another fun scenario. You wait back, sir.
Question for the hospitals in particular. Given that an earthquake in this scenario is sort of a regional affecting thing, there could be issues with transportation, whether with bridges being out, the airport being closed. What is the depth of medical supplies, equipment, and medications under normal patient loads? How long can you go without medical resupply?
That's a good question for me as well as for the ambulance, because they would be in the field, doing the work that needed to be done before the patient would arrive to us. We have quite a bit of supply. I mean, we have enough supply to do what's called shelter in place for 96 hours minimum, and that covers our patient needs supplies, staff, and food, water, that kind of stuff is in our plan. But I guess to answer your question, we would have to work together as a community and go from the smallest amount, which is what we have on stock, and then sharing between St. Pat's and ourselves, and then asking for help from the county, and then moving out until we may actually have to access our national stockpile. So we have ways of working through that and getting declarations and working with our partners here to move that direction. Does that answer your question?
As far as pre-hospital goes, Missoula County has a disaster trailer that's out at the airport. Dave could probably speak more to that, but there's enough equipment in the trailer, I believe, to treat, I want to say 100 patients, but I can't remember, is that right? And then we also house a trailer that's from the state. It's also a disaster trailer, but its purpose was more to backfill once ambulances are depleted and fire trucks are depleted, to get them back up to get gear on their truck to go to the next response. And I think we got enough stuff there to do 110 restocks of units. So in Missoula, closely, there's like at least 200 patients that could be handled. And there's 7 of those trailers. There's another one that sits in Butte. There's one that sits up in Kalispell. Billings got one. There's a couple over on the eastern side. And the other thing I forgot to mention too, if there was a disaster here, you're going to get a lot of help in from the counties around us with ambulances that'll come in and help. They come in and train during disaster drills. Between them and aircraft, it's pretty impressive the amount that we can get here within about an hour to 2 hours out to help transport patients. And like the gentleman from Outline said, we're going to have to rely heavily on probably Beach and them to move the patients that don't typically go in an ambulance, but could be safe enough to travel by a bus.
And just from the law enforcement perspective, we're talking about, we told you at the beginning of this whole thing that we're limited with the resources that we have. And we're talking right now today about the government's ability to assist you. I think everybody in the community has a certain obligation to assist themselves by being prepared so that you have enough food and basic, food, water, and basic medical items in your home to do some self-care so that the people who we need to get our initial responses to, the most severely injured and those most severely lacking. I think sometimes people look to government to provide too much all at once. I think preparedness in a community comes from people recognizing the fact that, hey, we only have so many professional resources that are available in a major incident. I have a certain obligation to protect my own family and to provide certain, emergency things for my family for a period of 10 days. I mean, it's not a lot of things to have, but it helps in the fact that it minimizes our need to respond, and it gives you and your family a better chance of surviving more comfortably.
Go for it. He's a great compliment.
Just to follow up on what Brad was saying, the federal government guideline is 96 hours before we'll get help from the feds. So before FEMA, Department of Transportation, all of those folks can arrive at the federal level, we should expect a response time of about 96 hours. So that's what we ask communities and families to prepare for, is to be self-sustaining for that first 96 hours. We're very fortunate in Montana that we have a great National Guard system, so some of those resources are actually housed right here in Montana in the FEMA region. So we can get some of those supplies to Missoula a little bit quicker than that, but the aid that comes behind that from the larger force is probably 96 hours realistically away. So Brad's advice is very well heeded.
Great stuff. I'm going to break my own rule. Ma'am, you had a question?
Yes. I was wondering, what do you do about assessing whether a disaster is declared or classified as a disaster? For example, you have a community where electricity goes out, and we found out recently that that's not a disaster, but it progressed as the day went on from 4 o'clock in the morning to we got electricity, thankfully, at around 8 o'clock that night. But I'm just wondering, so how do you advise communities to act on that kind of scenario? And is there a gradient, a scale? I don't know.
So in Montana, all of that's covered by what's called Title 10, which are the emergency powers granted to municipalities at the local level, so like the city of Missoula, and at the county level for the county government. And so it really depends on the scope, the amount of damage, the amount of people who are impacted, and then at the end of the day, it relies with the chief executive officer, so the mayor in the city and the chairperson of the Board of County Commissioners, working with their local Department of Emergency Services coordinator and the responders to make the determination as to which level we're at. So an emergency is that first level of declaration, where that generally means it's exceeding our local resource, so exceeding the city's ability to do that, but we can kind of manage that on either a county level or a multi-county level. And then a disaster typically is we've exhausted all of our resources and we need to go to the bigger mutual aid system that covers not only the state of Montana, but larger resources. It also allows us to tap into what's known as the emergency mill levy. That's the 2 mills that the county commissioners and the city of Missoula can impose in an emergency or disaster situation to be able to sustain the funding to be able to pay those additional responders that we've had to call back to work for extended periods of time. So,
one of the things that I noticed is that once the first disaster, the fire at the transformer was dealt with by our city, county, fire department, the problem was the fire chief and other people went to work. And then we found out that the transformer wasn't going to be fixed right away. And so then we had all these people in their households without electricity, and it was getting older, and people weren't making very wise decisions. How do you get the public to make decisions to their homes, or to be thinking about should they be and that's, I'm talking about the progression. It's easy when you have, I shouldn't say easy, but when you have an earthquake, you know you have an earthquake. But how about the progression of a disaster or an emergency? And I'd like you guys to talk about that.
I can only give you our experience from dealing with fires and trying to get some people to evacuate their home is like removing Lennon from his tomb. I mean, they'll stay until they're actually, the fire engulfs their home and themselves and their families. The way that we work the fire, there are certain, trigger lines. We have, obviously during a fire, we have a lot of resources out about doing notifications. But if a fire, let's say, reaches a certain trigger point, then evacuations are ordered for a certain area beyond that trigger point. For us to actually go in and force people to leave their homes is nearly impossible for us. I mean, it should be a common sense decision. But I can tell you from my perspective, common sense is a matter of perspective. And you deal with all kinds of people. So the only option that we have is to give you the best information that we have, that we recommend that you leave, and we move on with the warning that if the disaster continues and you stay in your house, we can't guarantee, because we're lacking resources, that we will come and be able to help you. Does that help any at all? I mean, we do have trigger points set up for certain events to put out evacuation notices, and different kinds, like an evacuation is 24 hours out if the fire continues this way. The evacuation is imminent, okay, evacuation is ordered. Those types of things and that type of progression, but getting people to heed those notices sometimes can be very difficult.
And I was asking about electricity. Why when you have a lot of health issues related to equipment and things like that, why is a lack of electricity over a lengthy period of time not considered a trigger point?
I don't think that it wouldn't be considered a trigger point, but the difference between an emergency and a disaster, as I think what these guys are trying to educate you on, is, you can't call it a disaster until all such and such resources are depleted, and those are just rules that are set up. But I think to help you, this situation we're doing right here with the dialogue is what's going to help that situation next time, and getting to know each other and building relationships between the community and the people that deal with these things in emergencies, because we all have to deal with it. And as much as it's our job to talk to you about evacuation, it might be your job to come make a relationship with me or these guys so that we can talk this out.
I think some of this stuff may come up again. I think there's going to be some commonality in this. So if we could move on, I know we actually have 8 scenarios here, so breakfast will be served. If you don't mind, I'd like to just try to do it. I think some of this stuff that you mentioned may be a little bit redundant, so some of these questions, hold your questions, I think they may cycle up on the next scenario. So the next scenario is entitled Airport Disaster. This takes place on a normal Thursday afternoon in May. A bright, cool, sunny day. The whine of a jet engine is heard moving slowly from the east toward the end of the runway at Missoula Airport. Suddenly, a loud crash could be detected, and it is known that the plane did not make its designated site. In the field east of the airport, debris have been strewn throughout a large area. No fireballs have been detected, and there seems to be an eerie silence. The tower at the airport is busily reporting the crash to authorities. Who are these authorities, and how will this disaster be handled? So let's hand that over to the airport.
Okay, we're running behind here, so I'm gonna make some assumption that this is a large aircraft since our other disasters are pretty big. We're gonna get a call from Missoula Air Traffic Control Tower. And they're gonna call the Public Safety Department, and in this case, again, an assumption, they're gonna call it an Alert 3, which is the most severe aircraft emergency. We will then call 911, Fire 1, and relay that information to a Response 3, which will bring pretty much every agency in this county and some surrounding counties on their way to the airport. We would respond with everything that we had. Our main focus at the airport, the Public Safety Department, the Fire Department, is to protect egress. It's been found that in all crashes, or most all crashes that are survivable, people are like Black Angus cattle, they go in where they came out, or vice versa, so they're gonna head right for the L1 door. And our main focus is to protect them as they leave the aircraft if it is on fire. In this case, it doesn't sound like it is. It's probably going to be a pancake in and no fire. Excuse me. All the responding agencies are coming to assist, and we even have, it says here that tower is reporting crash to authorities. Their job pretty much ends after the crash. They notify us. They would help us notify the NTSB and the FAA, and then it's pretty much going to be done. The airport is going to be closed, and depending on the scenario, just like I said, whether there is a fire, a normal day, our job again would just be to protect the passengers as they leave the aircraft. Rural would be assisting in evacuation, the cleanup, medical, well, all the agencies at that point. And then the airlines are going to be, of course, apprised of it. They're going to start making their calls for what they call their care teams, where they'll actually be flying people. If the airport is, they would probably be flying to an alternate airport at that time, but they actually have people there to deal with, along with the Red Cross, to deal with family members, patient reunification, all those types of things. And then our emergency plan is just going to start going down the line. The sheriff is the lead in every airport disaster in the state of Montana, state law. So he's going to be the incident commander, which will be passed to its varying departments, medical, transport, triage, all the other things. But that will be the way the plan runs for a crash of this nature.
I guess as a neighboring responding agency, as well as a number of other agencies within Missoula County, we would arrive on scene after being dispatched by 911 Center and arrive to help support a joint IC type of a team, and as well as immediately provide assistance in the event of a fire or anything of that nature. We respond with a number of varying apparatus to assist in that. One of our main functions as Missoula Rural Fire is to provide water and help the airport rigs in fire suppression and protect the exitway that Dave spoke about. Obviously our next step is, as Chief Banner discussed in the first scenario, was to continue that life safety, is start triaging and moving those patients. And with Dawn and Missoula Emergency Services in that plan as well, that start triage, get that moving, and just continue the process. We're only one of a number of agencies that Dave spoke about that would respond to this scenario, but we're maybe the next closest at least. So.
This is something that community in St. Pat's has been working on with the airlines and a bunch of other people on this team for many months. In fact, our airline disaster drill is in May, this coming May, and we are all set up to do either tabletop or full exercise accepting patients. And one of the interesting things that seemed to take a long time to decide is how we will, handle HIPAA information about patients with the airlines. They have these people on their aircraft, and there's an accident. What do we do to help those families get with their families after this happens? And we've been working on systems such as having the airlines understand how we do our triage tagging system, so that even without giving a name or anything, we can identify people by, the patient in room 22 was actually the same person in seat 12B, that kind of detail. So we've been working on that for quite some months and quite a bit of progress. We actually have, when the care teams are deployed from the airport, we actually have, they've given us at both hospitals their own incident command setup kit. They have a big Tupperware box full of all the stuff they'll need to have a liaison at the hospital, and we will also have a liaison at the airport so that we can work together to get people where they need to be.
Sheriff's Incident Commander, is that correct?
Yeah, the sheriff would be the incident commander. Overall, he would be responsible for the entire scene. Primarily, his focus after the initial incident is completed is going to be the coroner duties. And that's the proper recognition, identification, preservation, and collection of people who are deceased. And then to provide for the proper storage of those people, and then to reunify them and identify them for their family members. So it can be a very large job. We have many plans in place. One of the first things we would do is start calling our mutual aid for our friends at the city police department to handle calls for service, because we would need all of our sheriff's office personnel who are working to go to the airport. And our two agencies work very well together that way. If the city police department has a major incident that's going on that requires all of their resources, their shift sergeant just calls us and says, hey, can you take the calls for us? And it's never a problem. It's worked really, really well. The highway patrol would come to assist us mutual aid-wise with traffic control out at the airport, trying to help minimize our need to put deputies on traffic control points. And we do have plans in place, many of them that are located at the airport, to deal with that number of deceased people.
We do have eight different scenarios. I don't expect to get through them, by the way. That was just a jest. I'd much rather do fewer scenarios and let you guys get what you need out of the program. So if you got questions, anything we got so far on this latest scenario? Yeah, you in the back, sir.
Yeah, it's not actually, I didn't hear the answer before, but for the earthquake scenario, is the sheriff also the IC in that scenario?
It would be a unified command. I mean, that's what works best. I mean, there's a lot of different jurisdictions that are in play here. If it's an earthquake, it's going to be countywide. And the sheriff, the chief of police, I mean, in my opinion, it would be developed as a unified command. In most of our major exercise planning, we do deal with a unified command. And it works pretty well because that way all of the information is going to one command system, and then it's disseminated properly instead of being misplaced somewhere. That's the way we operate.
And is that unified command in place? Those people are already selected for that kind of thing?
They're not pre-selected in that we're always going to have the same people working every time, but it's for our agency, it's pretty much divided by rank. The most ranking guy, perhaps I would initially be the incident commander because I would be the first ranking officer on scene at the airport. Sheriff would be called in and he would take over. And I'll let Assistant Chief Brady answer. Theirs would be the same.
Okay, I'll be able to explain that a little bit too, Brad. Is the reason the incident commander being the sheriff in Montana is there's only really a handful of medium to large airports in Montana. So with 56 counties, they've decided that the sheriff be the incident commander for these major incidents because of the 50 counties that are so small that they just have to have somebody be the go-to person. My cousin's the sheriff in Marr County. He's one of 12 people that live there, so they've got to go to somebody right away. And then they dole it off to the proper as those folks show up. So it might sound kind of funny for the sheriff to be, the man at the onset, but it's all passed down. But that's the reason for that law.
Sir, you have a question?
Well, those of us who have studied the incident command system,
I would assume that it would be the officer at the airport that's the incident commander, because he's naturally the first one there on the scene. Then he would pass that off onto the sheriff. And like with the earthquake situation where there's no one first on scene, that was my question. It's normally listed as the chief law enforcement official in the jurisdiction.
It is the senior public safety officer on duty at the time of the incident, but within minutes it's going to be handed off.
Right, and then he's got to pass it off to the unified.
And it's a likelihood that also that lead person is going to be the one in the fire truck, so another good reason for the sheriff to be IC.
And realize that all the departments actually operate under ICS all the time. I mean, the fire department always has an incident commander. Their battalion chief is the incident commander to start with, and they're going to pass it as the incident grows. And the same thing for the sheriff's department. They have a street sergeant, or for the city police department, is a street sergeant who's going to be the first incident commander on scene, but he's going to pass that off as additional staff becomes available so that he can take on a different role. So.
Yeah.